Hi guys, welcome to my art studio. My name is Duffy and I'm an artist, and this is where I come to make pictures and write stories and poems and songs. It's a little bit like my own private space, as well as maybe like a classroom. I have got paper of all shapes and sizes. I have got books on all kinds of topics and with pictures done by different artists that I can look at for inspiration. I have my pens and pencils, crayons, markers, oil pastels, ink, paint, lots of different materials all around the room so I can take things whenever I feel inspired and start making work. So usually I come here and I'm on my own and I just do my own work. But today I thought, wouldn't it be great to work together? And we could make something together on the same idea and same theme and see what we can come up with. So to begin, I usually like to take a look at nature. So let's do that now. I'd like to tell you about a walk that I took recently. The sun was shining, so I decided to go for my walk outside to my favorite place. I could hear the birds singing as soon as I got there. And as I stood and I listened to the birds, I closed my eyes and I could feel the sun on my skin. And I could feel the soft grass beneath my feet. So I breathed in and out. I could smell the grass and the fresh air. And I decided this was the perfect place to sit and relax and listen and watch. When I sat down, the quieter I became, the more I could hear. I started to hear a familiar sound, the buzzing of bees. So I looked and I saw there was quite a few bees buzzing around the wildflowers in the grass. And because I was being very calm and very still, they didn't seem to notice me. I took out my notebook and my pencil and I decided to look very close and to start to draw and to take this opportunity while they weren't really paying attention to me to draw the details and to understand what they were doing and how they work. So let's have a look at what I saw. Take a look at all these bees that I saw. You'll notice when you look at them that they're all a little bit different. They're all different kinds of bees. So now's a great time to get a piece of paper in front of you and something to draw with. And let's spend a bit of time together drawing what we can see on the screen. So very closely observing the details of each one of the bees. What makes each bee different and unique? It might be the color. It might be that sometimes they're very fuzzy, or maybe they're very round, or maybe they're very long and narrow. Have a look and see if you can kind of figure out how many legs they have, their antennas, their head, and how their body might work. By drawing, we can start to understand the bees. So here we go, pens or pencils in hand, and let's start drawing. Something interesting I learned about bees recently is that there are really tiny, 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 tiny creatures called mites, and they sometimes use bees a bit like a taxi service. So they'll hop onto a bee's leg or onto a bee's back or onto their wing, and they'll go flying with the bee. And they'll go from one flower to the next and maybe hop off and then hop on another bee and hop onto the next bee and then onto the next flower. And sometimes they even go back to the hive or back to the bee's home. And I thought, gosh, isn't that so interesting that there would be an even tinier creature that could be living there on the bee that we can't really see very well with our eyes. And I thought, imagine if we could become that small and get that close to a bee and start to look at all the details of that bee and see what it really looks like up really, really close. So if you were to get really close to this bee here, say, what might you notice? Well, let's have a closer look. Imagine we were sitting right up on top of that bee. You might notice that it has 3 dots on the top of its head. Well, this is one of the very interesting things about bees, because you might think of bees as having 2 eyes, like we have 2 eyes, but in fact, bees have got 5 eyes. They've got 2 big eyes, one on their side of their heads, and then 3 small eyes on the top of their head called ocelli. And these eyes are a little bit more simple than their normal eyes, and they just see differences in light. So let's take a second now to pretend we are that little tiny creature living and sitting on the top of this bee, and we're drawing the detail we can see. And let's take a second to draw this bee's head with its 5 eyes. And so if we were really tiny, what else might we be able to see? Let's zoom in. Here you can see the head of a bee where we can show the mouth. It has kind of these pieces coming out and a tongue that comes out of the end of it. And have a close look at the antennas. And you can even see there the bee's foot. As usual, it's got almost 2 claws on the end of it. And then we have a close-up of the bee's wing. You can have a draw of that too. So how does a bee taste? Well, surprisingly, a bee can taste by its tongue, but also by its antennas and also by its front feet. So imagine if you were going around the world as a bee and everywhere you put your feet, you were tasting the world. Let's spend some time here drawing these details. So if we were on a bee as a taxi ride going from flower to flower, what kind of flowers might we visit? Well, bees like to sleep in flowers and take a rest on a flower, but they also go from flower to flower looking for food. And these are some of the flowers in Ireland that we might find that we might get to visit. So there's a daisy, some fuchsia, some brambles, some cowslip. So now let's take a second and let's start to draw the different flowers we could visit. Look again at the detail of each flower. How is each flower unique? Is it their petals, their stem, maybe their leaves, their colour? See if in your drawing you can show the differences in all these flowers. And let's keep going. The favorite flower of a bee, I think, is the dandelion. Dandelions are a lovely flower that you see a lot in the world, and you often see bees buzzing on them. So let's make sure to draw some dandelions. Got some primroses and some spiky thistles and some valerian here as well. And let's see if you can get all the differences of these flowers down in your drawing. And so while you're sitting there on the bee, you too might get covered in pollen. So while the bee is going around searching for food, it's getting pollen and it's getting the nectar from the flower. You might also get covered in all this yellow powder. And so what do bees do next? Well, you might go with them back to their home. Some bees live together in hives like honeybees. Honeybees live in these kinds of places that they build maybe in the crack of a tree or on the side of a tree, and they build them all together and they maintain them all together, and then they create honey. So you might like to take a second to draw maybe some of these segments here of the honeycomb, or maybe to draw a hive on the side of a tree. Interestingly, now you might have hopped onto a different kind of bee. Most bees don't actually live together. They live maybe in small groups or completely alone, like solitary bees. One of my favorite kinds of bees is actually this bee here, and you might have guessed what it's doing. It's actually digging a hole because this is a solitary mining bee. So if you were sat on this bee's back, it might start to dig and bring you down into a hole in the ground where it creates all these different rooms and tunnels, and it hides its food down there to eat all through the year. So take a second now and see if you can draw yourself a bee home in the ground. So as well as flying from flower to flower, maybe into a beehive and down into the ground, you might get to fly through the air, through the clouds, up really, really high and look down on the world from a really great height. And imagine you're sitting there now on top of that bee. There's one other thing about bees that we haven't really come to yet. And that is that in old Irish stories, it's said that bees can understand what humans say, and that they are messengers between our world, which is the regular world, and a sort of a magical world, and that they bring messages from us to this magical world, the kind of world where maybe fairies might live. So imagine you're on the back of this bee and it takes you to that place. Where does it take you? How does it take you there? Maybe you go through a portal or a door in a flower, or maybe it's up in the clouds amongst the sky or the stars or the sun. Or maybe it's when you're digging down in the tunnel in the ground, you go digging, digging, digging into another world. So take some time now to think for yourself, where is this magic world that the bees go to and what is there? And see if you can draw a few things about that. Okay, wonderful. So we've gone very, very, very small and we've imagined that we're a tiny, tiny little bug sitting on the back of the bee. And we've drawn our pictures with lots of detail of the different kinds of bees, the different kinds of flowers. And we've thought about this different magic worlds that maybe they bring you to, and what that might look like. How might you get there? Where does it exist? So lots of interesting things happening on your pages. And now what are we going to do with our drawings? So now that we have those, let's use them to make a story. And I don't mean just make a story. I mean, let's make our very own book with pictures and words and a cover and pages and everything. And I'm going to show you how. So the first thing we're going to do is make our cover. And for that, you need your A4 piece of card. So put your piece of card landscape, which is long ways this way, on your table. And then you're going to fold it in half this way, as if it's a little copybook. So fold it once this way. And then you're going to fold it again this way. So it's an even smaller copybook. So your piece of card is on your table in front of you, landscape, which is a long ways this way. Then you fold it in half, and then you fold it in half again. And that is going to be your book cover. How simple that is. Once you have that ready, we're just going to put that to the side. And the next thing we're going to do is make the pages. So to make the pages of your book, you're going to take an A4 sheet of paper. So it could be any color, but mine just happens to be white. And what you're going to do is fold it in half, just like you did that last page. You have it landscape wise, and then you fold it in half. But this time you're just going to fold it in half this one time to match up those corners as you come down on your fold, and then fold the paper. So now you have it folded, you can open it out again. And what we're going to do is actually cut along this line. That's just to show us where to cut. So we're going to cut this page in half so that we make 2 pages out of it. Take your time, fold your page in half, open it out, and then cut the piece into 2 pieces. Take your time getting it ready, like that. And once you've done that, you can put those pages landscape again in front of you so that both pages are landscape, which is long that way and long that way. And we're going to take a bit of glue, or if you have sellotape, you could use sellotape. And we're going to put some glue along the edge here of this page so we can stick them both together. So a line of glue there. Line of glue here, and then take this page and glue that down on top. So now you've turned those two pages into just one big long page, like this. So take your time and get your paper ready. Once you have your pages ready, you can pick up your cover again and open it out. And what we're going to do is stick this paper into the back of the book. So the book opens this way. This is the back page. I'm going to take some glue and glue in here like this. And then I'm going to take my big long page, landscape wise again, and I'm going to stick this into the back of the book, just like this. So when the book closes, it's like that. And when it opens, the page is stuck in along here. Now you might be thinking, well, that cover doesn't really seem to fit this very well. What we're going to do is once you have that stuck in, and you can give it a bit of a rub, make sure that glue has dried a little bit before you do anything. We're going to take the end of this paper, and this bit's a little bit tricky. Take the end of your big long piece of paper, and you're just going to bring it down and fold it. There's lots of folding happening today. Fold it in half this way. So now I have it, my big long piece, folded in like that. Then we're going to come to the edge again and fold it in half again. So in half this way. And now, once you have your page folded once, twice in half, you can close your cover like that. And when you open it, you'll see that your paper folds out like this. So take your time getting that ready. Once you have that ready, we're going to be doing our story. So the next thing that's a good idea to do is get the drawings that you did earlier beside you so you can use them to help you with your story. And I think maybe we could start with the cover. So the story is going to be about the time when you were a tiny, tiny, tiny bug and you got on the back of a bee and you used it like a taxi and you were going everywhere the bee went. Maybe in your story, you're going to hop onto a different flower and then onto a different bee, or maybe you're going to visit a bee's home, or maybe a few bee houses. But definitely in our stories, we need to include, as well as all the different things that we visit, that the bee takes us into that strange other world. How do we get there? What's there? What happens? And how do we get home? So for my cover, I'm going to draw myself sitting on the top of the bee. Okay, so here I am on my cover. I'm sitting on the back of this bee. And I think the bee I'm on might be one of these solitary bees. Maybe I'm going to go mining underground. Let's find out. Now, in here is all our pages where we can draw our adventure. You might do a little bit of writing. That's up to you. You might like to do some writing, and you might like to do just pictures. So I'm just going to go ahead and start doing my one, and we'll see what happens. So I'm getting started on my story. I've decided that one day I was in the woods and I was breathing in and breathing out and listening to the sounds of the woods when I heard the buzzing bee. And I turned into a tiny, 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 tiny version of myself and jumped on its back. And I've gone flying with the bee to a flower where I found I could actually taste the flower with my feet just the way the bee could. And then the bee is going to take me down into the mines and into a magic world. And then maybe I'm going to go at the very end to taste some honey at a honeybee's hive. So let's see what happens in your story. Great. So I hope you really enjoy making your bee stories. Where are you going to go? Are you going to go flying high in the sky? What flowers are you going to visit? Are you going to taste the nectar of a flower? Might you go digging and mining underground? Or might you visit a honeybee hive? Or will you find yourself going to this magic world that we were speaking about? All of it is possible in your story. So see what happens when you start drawing and writing. Make sure to spend time at the end sharing your stories with each other, and make sure to spend time watching the bees when you go out. It's been great working with you today. Enjoy your stories, enjoy your work, and see you again next time. Bye.